Hi, my name is Anna Parker, and this is my oral midterm for Psych 516 D02 at Liberty University. The first topic I will be discussing is that of how historical events affect the course of research in organizational psychology. So, as the constructs and demands of the workplace change, that directs how research is being done, as well as what topics are of interest to researchers in the field. So if you look over the history of organizational psychology, you see how the different times affect the different areas and focus of research. And if we go back to the 60s, we see the redefinition of the field of organizational psychology as multidimensional, bringing industrial and organizational together, and really looking at more non-traditional subjects, and that was a big piece in changing the direction of research in the field. And then if you fast forward to the 60s, you see the impact of globalization and the redefinition of a job, as that is once again shifting the direction of study in the field of organizational psychology. If we look at more recent times, something that I find particularly interesting is the development of communication technology. This really began to grow in the 2000s, and as communication technologies were developed and expanded, that really affects the workplace. Computers start doing the work that employees used to do manually. That changes the types of jobs that are necessary and training and experience that is needed for employees as they work with new technologies, and communication between employees, between organizations and customers change. As all of those things change, that indicates directions of research to be done. Some of those research questions might be, how do we use this technology in an organizational setting? How do we train the employees to use this technology? And how does this technology affect the employee and how they do their job? And so these are just a few of many examples of how events of history affect the direction of research within the field of industrial organizational psychology. Second, I will be talking about socialization process of grad students in this very program. So the socialization process begins through the admissions process. During admissions, Liberty is really good at communicating the values of the school and the importance of you, the student, to them through their phone calls and emails, just always checking in on how you're doing, what information you need, what questions you have, and what can help you make your decision. So once you have been accepted into the program and are a student of Liberty, ongoing communication of socialization happens through email communications and occasional phone calls. Their continuous emails are always communicating the values of the university, setting expectations, letting you know about timelines of when things need to be done. This piece of socialization I think is interesting because it is communicating like task information, things you need to know to do your work, but also just keeping you connected to the organization. As a remote student, it's easy to just do your work and just on your computer and be separated, but the constant communication just reminds you that, hey, you're a part of this thing. But I think the majority of socialization comes through the courses themselves. There are courses that are set up for grad students to communicate within the program who are not in specific classes together, but that's just a wider way to get to know more students, and that's really important, as we know that socializing with others within the organization is as important as learning the values of the organization itself. Also, within specific courses such as this one, socialization occurs through the syllabus and setting expectations, the teacher and communicating with us, communicating the tasks of the class, but also their care for the students. And I think the discussion boards are really great as it's socializing between students as they interact, but is facilitated by the instructors of the course. And yeah, so I think that there is a lot of great socialization going on that plays into job embeddedness in this program. I think something that's important to note is that job embeddedness requires effort from both parties. So job embeddedness is feeling connected and fitting in with the organization or the program in this case, and feeling like you'd be giving up something by leaving. And so just the fact that it takes effort from both parties, Liberty can do everything in its power to socialize a student and communicate values and communicate this and that, but it also takes the student buying into it. So for example, myself, I am really bought into the academic aspect of this program, but I haven't really taken time to connect with the others in this program and become part of the community in this program. And so that aspect of not quite feeling completely embedded in this program is on me, as Liberty has set up everything for me to partake in to really be a part of this. So I think that's an important factor to consider, is that it takes effort from both parts to really experience job embeddedness, and that is definitely a challenge when you have people working remotely, online students. Yeah, so that is kind of what socialization within this program looks like. Third, we are talking about work-family conflict and what an organization can do to reduce work-family conflict. So work-family conflict pretty much arises when facets of the work environment interfere with the non-work environment. And so we see this in scheduling conflicts, we see this in expectations for work to be happening off the clock, and even in mental health issues that overflow into the home. So ways that an organization, there are many ways that an organization can combat work-family conflict. A very common one is to have policies in place that allow for things that might arise, such as elder care or taking a sick child to the doctor's office, or even if an employee is getting an education and something conflicts in their work schedule with their education. So there are lots of policies that can be put in place so that there isn't question about, is this acceptable? Those policies can outline that for an employee and help them just feel more secure in how work and family will balance out. Another thing that can affect work-family conflict is just employee satisfaction. An employee that is satisfied with their job will typically experience less anxiety and more happiness in the job environment, and that can translate to better communication and all kinds of great stuff. And so if an employee is satisfied in their job, they are happy with their organization, there is a lot less work-family conflict that can happen there, and so that's something that an organization can work on to help with the work-family conflict. Another thing that is really great is benefits. If employees are receiving benefits that help their families, this communicates to the employee that the organization cares about them and their family and what's going on in their life outside of the workplace. And lastly, the thing that I think is very, very important in work-family conflict is just leadership. How a leader leads the employees has a major effect on their experience in the workplace. And so a leader that is very supportive, a leader that communicates well, and like personally and socially, as well as task-oriented. Good communication from a leader, good listening from a leader can really help in that work-family conflict, as employees are able to work out conflict and they feel comfortable talking to their supervisors about what is going on and what they need help with. So work-family conflict is very prevalent, but there are lots of things that an organization can do to help reduce that. Our fourth question is looking at how to adequately and comprehensively evaluate employee performance. So if you are tasked with developing a performance assessment program, you want to consider three things. What are the factors that you're assessing? How will you assess those factors? And what is the standard that you're looking at? So when you're looking at the factors you're assessing, you want to consider in-role behaviors, which are those that pertain to the specific task that the employee has been given, and then extra-role behaviors, which refer to the context the employee finds themselves in. So looking at Murphy's model of job performance, there's 4 things to consider. Task-oriented behaviors, which would be those in-role behaviors specifically pertaining to the job the employee has. And then interpersonal behaviors would be an extra-role behavior. That is any interaction that an employee has with clients or other employees. Downtime will consider what is happening in the non-work environment that is affecting the employee's work. And then the 4th is destructive and hazardous behaviors. So once you have figured out what factors you want to assess, then you need to look at how you will assess them. And so when you're assessing performance, it's important to use many different mediums to get a more complete picture. So you would want to use things like performance reports as well as self-reports and observation, so that you can hear from the employee personally, but also see objectively from the outside what is going on in their work. And then the last thing we want to consider is, what are the standards that we're looking at? Are we evaluating just typical job performance, or are we looking for maximum job performance? And then lastly, it's always important to consider variability when assessing job performance. What is changing in how the assessments are being done, what is changing in how people are understanding the assessments. And so those are the things you want to consider to adequately and have like a comprehensive plan to assess employee performance. Our 5th question is looking at organizational constraints and how they can lead to counterproductive work behaviors. So first I want to talk about the cultures and norms within an organization. Cultures and norms can have a major effect on counterproductive behaviors. For example, I come from an organization working at a Christian outdoor adventure camp where it is totally normal to kick a soccer ball up and down the hallway in the middle of the workday, to pop in and out of each other's offices talking about what you watched last night, or to take a break with your buddy to go get cupcakes from a friend's house. So if those are norms that are accepted, that will lead to more counterproductive work behavior because people assume that it's okay. So the culture and the norm has a lot to do with how much counterproductive behaviors are happening during the work day. Next, along with those like situational factors, I want to look at workplace setup. So typically, very open workplace setups lend themselves to more socialization and more distractions that can lead to more counterproductive work behaviors. And so in that, looking at if those workplaces are highly monitored or not. Highly monitored workplaces will have less counterproductive work behaviors, as people know that they need to be more on track and focused on their work behaviors as opposed to counterproductive work behaviors. And kind of going along the same lines with group cultures and the workplace setup, leadership is really important within an organization and how it leads to counterproductive work behaviors. If leaders are clear and concise with their expectations, then employees will know what to do and they will know what is expected of them, and that can help reduce counterproductive work behaviors, as opposed to if a employee doesn't have a leader that's leading well, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, so they'll waste a lot of time doing things that they don't really need to be doing.